This is CGTN, China Global Television Network.
Hello and welcome to Global Business. I am Peninah Karibe. As always, we begin with a look at the markets. European shares rose today as the decision to extend trade talks between Britain and the European Union kept hopes of an eventual deal alive. But gains in London's blue chips lagged a higher pound and a near 6% drop in AstraZeneca weighed the Johannesburg Stock Exchange to fund today as continued hope for a US stimulus package and vaccine rollouts helped lift investor sentiment. Coming up on the show tonight, optimism renewed. The post-Brexit trade deal may be finalized by December 31st. Nigeria's trade deficit balloons in the third quarter of 2020. And the US begins to roll out vaccines in the fight against COVID-19. There's renewed optimism that a post-Brexit trade deal between the EU and the UK can be eked out by the end of the transition period on 31st December. Ursula von der Leyen says talks are now in the very last mile, at 180 from last week, when a working dinner between the Commission President and the UK Prime Minister Boris Johnson led to both sides saying no deal was the most likely outcome. CGTN's Tony Waterman has the latest from Brussels.
After a dark and gloomy few days, the sun appears to be shining again on post-Brexit trade talks. Europe's chief negotiator telling EU ambassadors that talks are now moving in the right direction, and a deal could still be clinched, perhaps even as early as this week. Heading into the meeting early Monday morning, Michel Barnier said it was Europe's responsibility to continue the very difficult negotiations, and that the next few days will be crucial.
We are going to give every chance to this agreement, which is still possible. Two conditions haven't been filled yet: free and fair competition and an agreement that guarantees reciprocal access to markets and waters.
Negotiators were back around the table in Brussels on Monday, trying to bust through the impasse after their respective bosses, Commission President Ursula von der Leyen and UK Prime Minister Boris Johnson, agreed on Sunday to go the extra mile for a deal. And there are signs that compromises are finally emerging. An independent arbitrator could reportedly help solve the tricky issue of maintaining fair competition in the future. But a deal on access to UK fishing waters remains elusive, with both sides saying more work is needed to bridge the divide.
As the Prime Minister said, we need to make sure that we go the extra mile. It's what businesses want, it's what people in our country want, and that is precisely what we're doing. We're not going to be walking away from these talks.
With another deadline come and gone in these negotiations, neither the EU nor the UK put an expiration date on this latest round of talks. But the ultimate deadline remains December 31st, when the transition period ends, trade deal or not.
We're on the very last mile to go, but it's an essential one. And we want a level playing field. We want a level playing field not only at the start, but also over time. And this is the architecture we are building.
The longer negotiations drag out, the less time Parliament will have to review and ratify a deal if one is found. But there's growing speculation that even without the final sign-off from MEPs, the treaty could be provisionally applied to help protect consumers and businesses in what is $1 trillion a year trade relationship. Tony Waterman, CGTN, Brussels.
Let's get more on the ongoing negotiations with Richard Bestick is live for us in London. Richard, there's just over 2 weeks left to that December 31st deadline. Is there reason for optimism that this new round of talks will yield results?
Yeah, the mood has been swinging violently between optimism and pessimism, Peninah. But in the last few hours, it does seem, as Tony's news report there indicated, that there have been some kind of movements inside the negotiations. These seem to be relating largely to the mechanism by which the fair level playing field will be established and monitored. And while there have been advances apparently in that direction, well, as Tony was suggesting there has been no movement on the fishing side. The access by European Union boats to British fishing waters, indeed, that appears to be going back. Nevertheless, the markets are delighted. They've gone up marginally, nudging up. The British industry, British business and Britain's trade unions have all welcomed what indications are coming out of the talks that there may be some kind of development on the cards. So for the time being, at least, Peninah, the watchword is optimism. But you'll remember that announcement last night by the British Prime Minister Boris Johnson saying that they were extending the talks. That should have been grounds for optimism. He was Mr. Glum in that, suggesting that there was still a long, long way to go. It was more likely no deal than a deal, and mentioned World Trade Organization terms 3 times in a 4-minute interview. So optimism for the moment, Peninah, but it could easily swing back the other way.
All right, Richard. So what's at stake for the UK should there be a no deal by the end of the month?
Well, Britain left the European Union in January at the beginning of the year. In the last year, it's been in a transition period. In other words, it's still maintained its trading relationship with the European Union and accords to all the European Union's laws and rules. That ends in a few days from now, on December the 31st at midnight. And at that point, all the working relationships that Britain has had going back over some 4 decades, where the economies of the European Union and Britain have been completely interwoven, every element of that will change. Britain will become a third party. It will have reams of new paperwork to adopt to. The government is already building massive lorry parks in the approaches to some of its ports, because they anticipate there will be a huge build-up of lorries waiting to get over. And then, of course, the consequences are dire for fresh fruits, fresh food. How long can they be kept held waiting to get across the channel? And of course, the motor industry, which is a critical part of the British economy, that too, it depends on just-in-time delivery of parts and goods, and that could be disrupted. So massive disruption to the British economy could be a consequence, even if they get some kind of deal, some kind of trading arrangement with the European Union in the next couple of days.
Well, what we do know, Richard, at this point is that deal or no deal, 2021 will begin with new realities for Britons and the EU citizens. What are some of the immediate changes the region will see?
Well, of course, there's that new bureaucracy that business will have to take on board. If there is no deal, they will be also entering into a phase where, for the first time in decades, several decades, they will be expected to pay tariffs, as the country's relationship with the European Union falls back on what the government likes to call Australian terms, which means, of course, no terms at all. It'll fall back on World Trade Organization rules, and that involves tariffs. Now, that could have a large impact on the economy. That could mean that there are, for some food produce, tariffs of some 55%, up to 55%. The Welsh farming industry, the lamb industry in Wales, is saying farmers in some areas will just be wiped out. So the impact, the changes will be great, and they will have sweeping effects on the British economy. So this is why there is this need here among industry, among agriculture, to have some kind of arrangement, some kind of deal in place.
All right, Richard, thank you very much for that. Richard Bestick live in London for us. Now, Nigeria has recorded a negative trade balance in the third quarter of this year, amounting to $6 billion. It's the latest grim report for Africa's biggest economy, which slammed to a recession in the third quarter after a COVID-led plunge in crude prices. CGTN's Kelechi Emekalam reports from Abuja.
The latest report from the country's Bureau of Statistics puts the total trade volume for the third quarter at $21.6 billion. That's a 34% increase compared to the previous quarter. While exports stood at $7.72 billion, total import value was $13.89 billion, leaving a $6.1 billion deficit.
We are in minus 3.10%. There are many countries that are double digit, and they still can't see light in the end of the tunnel. So I think with our population, with our determination to shift more towards the private sector, and with excess liquidity in the private sector right now to invest, I think that we will come out of it stronger. That's not only that there is pressure on oil, which is our major commodity that gives us 90% of our forex revenue. It disrupted it, and so we lost substantial volume and also drop in price from our benchmark of $57 down to $28. But on the other hand, of course, our export was also impacted on because the disruption on the supply chain affected our industries. About 80% of our manufacturing capacity still imported their raw materials. So the disruption meant we couldn't get them in.
Nigeria's biggest impact on the balance of trade deficit has been the playoff in the oil sector. The nation's production volume dropped from 2.1 million barrels to 1.3 million barrels per day, but government has been pushing to increase non-oil exports.
We have done well last year on export of non-oil, and so those are likely to pick up sooner than later. We're struggling to keep the import down, and we're doing that with import substitution programs, and there's a lot of investment on that side. We spend over $12.5 billion importing and food-related items and all that. So there are actions to reduce the impact of. The central bank has put over $3.5 trillion on the table. The government economic sustainability plan, $2.3 trillion on the table. And we have more involvement of private sector in a way that we haven't seen before.
The value of imports in the third quarter is the highest recorded since 2017. Industry observers project that the trade may stabilize by the second quarter of 2021. But experts want to see infrastructural development, standardized production, and a boost in manufacturing, which is expected to trigger a boost in export and balance out the trade. Kelechi Emekalam, CGTN Abuja, Nigeria.
You're watching Global Business. Let's take a quick break. Coming up, climate change deemed an increasing threat to Africa. And Egypt Air ready to transport doses of the anticipated coronavirus vaccine.
The world economy as we know it is about to change. Global business reports highlight emerging markets, developing countries, and dynamic sectors worldwide. We feature top analysts and newsmakers to provide perspectives on every facet of business. From an on-the-ground perspective, we provide you with balanced and objective assessments. Fast, sharp, and insightful. Global Business, only on CGTN.
Every story starts out like this.
Okay, we'll head up now.
Beyond the rush of the numbers, there's always a more fundamental question. What happened? Who has been affected?
When market-moving decisions are made, who's responsible and why?
Let's get some reaction on ground. Joining us in Johannesburg is Sutra Nairobi. Hello, Nairobi.
This is how whole stories begin. See how they end. Only on Global Business. Africa is the nexus of enterprise, and Global Business will tell you why it matters.
From the mega investment projects to multi-billion-dollar mergers and acquisitions.
Africa today collects, just in terms of revenues from taxes alone, $545 billion a year. If you take 10% of that and you devote it to the energy sector, problem solved.
All this on Global Business, weekdays at this time on CGTN.
Climate change is seen as an increasing threat to Africa. In recent years, the continent has seen devastating floods, followed by extended periods of drought and famine. African temperatures in recent decades have been warming at a rate comparable to that of most other continents, and that's somewhat faster than global mean surface temperature. The year 2019 was among the 3 warmest years on record for the continent, and that trend is expected to continue. This has triggered more threats to food security in Africa. Environmentalists and activists have called for sustainable solutions to tackle the effects of climate change in the continent. Ezekiel Chibeze is the co-founder of 350 Ghana and board member of 350.org. He joins us via Zoom from Ghana's capital, Accra. First off, Ezekiel, congratulations on winning the Goldman Environmental Prize. What does this award mean to you?
Well, thank you very much, and a good evening to your cherished viewers and listeners. Yes, I mean, so this award brings a lot of happiness, a lot of joy. So for me, it shows that once you are very active and contribute to social good, there is a reward, that awaits you. So for me, it's a form of motivation to continue doing the work that we are doing.
Right. So you've been at the forefront of campaigns against the construction of the Abuano coal power station. 7 years since it was proposed, it is still not off the ground. So do you consider this a win for you and other environmentalists? And is it definite that the government has cancelled it altogether?
Yes. Can you repeat the question? The line was breaking up.
Yes, I was talking about the coal plant. 7 years ago, it was proposed. You've been fighting it. And I was asking if this is a win. Do you think of it as a win for you and other people as well who are in your field, environmentalists? And also, can we now say that the government has called it off altogether?
Yes. Well, I would say it's a win for all of us, not only for us as environmentalists, but for Ghanaians, including the government. I think that's because it is a conversation we had, and government also listened to our part of the discussions, and they felt that we were making some meaningful submissions, so they had to listen to us. I would say that it was not a 7-year continuous campaign, because the idea first came up in 2013, when we read in the news that the government of Ghana was having a conversation with the Chinese company, Tanzanian Energy Group, to build a coal power plant in Ghana. And then the whole news died off a bit, and then only for the government to come out with a scoping report in December 2015, and then government came out again with a scoping notice in January 2016, to inform the public that if people have any concerns or any views, they should make their case heard. But beyond that, we have done our groundwork. We have been monitoring the process. So when government officially announced it, then we kicked in with our campaign, and then we moved it from there. So having said that, I would say that okay, so it is a win-win for all of us, including government, because the good thing is that the government of Ghana has not only stopped the plan to build a coal plant, but they're making frantic efforts. They're putting so much effort to promote renewable energy in Ghana. In February 2019, the government of Ghana came out with what we call the Renewable Energy Master Plan, which gives a whole plan in terms of how we want to develop and utilize renewable energy from 2015 or 2019 to 2030. So there's a whole clear plan to promote renewable energy in Ghana. And interestingly, even that plan is being supported by the Chinese government and also the UNDP in Ghana. So I would say it's not a win only for us, but also a win for all the stakeholders who were even initially involved in the coal plant.
Now, you work very closely with grassroots movements, and a lot of decisions are made in capital cities and urban areas, by governments and multinationals. Why are grassroots movements important, and how much impact can they really have on how policies are made and implemented?
Well, I think that we're usually under
All right, I'm afraid we seem to be having connection problems with Ezekiel. He's been joining us via Zoom in Accra, Ghana. Ezekiel Chibeze. Now let's move on to Egypt. Its national carrier, Egyptair, says it is ready to transport doses of the anticipated coronavirus vaccine to Egypt and any other destinations. The company's fleet will be supported by 3 Boeing 777 aircrafts that will help transport the vaccine. Most of the vaccines on the horizon need to be kept at very low temperatures. Yasser Hakim looks at whether Egypt has the capabilities to transport the vaccines in or out of the country.
The transport of vaccines seems to be nearly as complicated as creating the vaccine itself.
Talking about the most challenging vaccine, it's Pfizer vaccine, because it has to be kept under 70 degrees, below 70 degrees Celsius, in order to have the airlines and the aircrafts equipped with deep freezers to keep the vaccines below minus 70 degrees Celsius. And once it reaches to the country has 10 days to transport it from the airport to the dispensing facilities. The storage of the Sinopharm vaccine and actually most of the Chinese vaccines can be stored in a temperature between 2 to 8 degrees Celsius, which is actually similar to all the vaccines we currently have in our region. So the transportation, the dispensing and storage is much easier, especially for the developing countries.
Egypt's national air carrier has announced it is ready to transport the vaccines and has dedicated 3 Boeing 777 cargo planes. It's also preparing more planes from its passenger fleet based on demand.
The passenger planes can be used to transport vaccines because they have the ability to carry products that weigh up to 20 tons. The 50,000 doses received from China via Emirates Airways this week prove that we have the relevant machinery to move vaccines from the plane to equipped storage facilities to store the vaccines until it's distributed to hospitals.
Of the accredited vaccines in the market, at least 2 need to be stocked in extremely cold temperatures. Experts say this requires capabilities available in only a few countries.
Our air carrier, Egypt Air Holding Company, has a very important license called CEIV. The certificate is accredited by IATA. The certificate proves we have the ability to properly transport and store medicine and vaccines. We have 6,000 meters of warehouse that are ready to receive vaccines at a temperature of minus 20 degrees Celsius, which is suitable for the Chinese vaccine. But there are talks to study the possibility of upgrading the warehouses to store Pfizer vaccines.
Cairo has been negotiating with China and Russia to produce their vaccines in Egypt as well, and distributed throughout Africa.
We have the capabilities in terms of human capabilities and knowledge. We have the latest knowledge in terms of manufacturing and in terms of the technology itself and how to manufacture the vaccine. This will be transferred from the manufacturers of the vaccine themselves.
And with Egypt Air able to transport the locally manufactured vaccines to its neighbors, Egypt can become a hub for vaccines in North and East Africa. Yasser Hakim for CGTN, Cairo.
Huawei's Seeds for the Future program is enhancing ICT skills for Tunisia's university students. This is in turn helping them cope with technology demands that come with the dynamics in the digital space. Now running in its sixth year, the program has strengthened Tunisian-Chinese collaboration in several fields and especially in new technology. From Tunis, here's Adnet Shawashi with more details.
Despite the uncertainty caused by the COVID-19 pandemic, Tunisian participants were not deterred as they completed this year's Huawei-funded Digital Skills Development Program. The Seeds for the Future program, which is sponsored by the Chinese Embassy and by electronics giant Huawei, seeks to enhance skills of university students by sharpening their ICT knowledge.
We believe we are a company that we could contribute more to this society. Well, one of our advantages is we can introduce more new technologies and help Tunisia to train more young and talented people.
Today we are celebrating the ceremony for the closure of the Seeds for the Future program. This program it's the 6th edition now in Tunisia, and frankly speaking, this is a very big and very interesting opportunity to our students to experience the enterprise culture, the Chinese culture, and have access to the latest technologies provided by Huawei.
The Tunisian Minister of ICT welcomed the partnership with Chinese electronics giant Huawei.
We're counting on the Tunisian youths and talents who are participating in this program. They will take on the challenge of digital transformation in Tunisia. In partnership with Huawei, we will make giant steps in this direction.
Tunisian engineering students believe that Seeds for the Future program is both a technological experience as well as a cultural and human journey.
We taught lots of new technologies like cloud, 5G. It was a really amazing adventure for all of us.
It was a great experience. We discovered new culture such as Chinese culture, and we made a new friendship. We discovered new opportunities in Huawei.
The finalists of the program hope to travel to China and to visit the headquarters of Huawei after the end of the global health crisis.
Many Chinese enterprises have been devoted in cultivating ICT talents in Tunisia. Seeds for the Future by Huawei is viewed by the authorities in Tunis and professionals as one of the most successful cooperation projects in the field of ICT. Adnan Shawishi, CGTN, Tunis.
You're watching Global Business. Coming up after the break. US accelerates plans for mass vaccinations. And experts call for financial markets to aid in boosting economies.
Taken me completely out of my depth, but at the same time it's exciting. It's new, it's different, it's a challenge.
It's really exciting.
Over the last 14 hours of rain.
Business in Africa is at a crossroads. We celebrate those who are adopting and thriving despite the challenges, from grassroots to big businesses. Global Business takes you along for the ride as we track the making of a giant.
Only on CGTN.
How will your world change today? What happens here? what happens there, or what you make happen for yourself. If it matters to you, it matters to us too. Your stories are the stories that need to be told. Africa Live. Find your voice.
I try to not let it affect me, but there are days when it does. I'm a human being, and to see patients in a hospital bed and their family members are not there, there's no one there to hold their hand, that human touch, you know?
I just hope everyone can remember that the situation is not permanent and that everything will get better eventually.
In other news making headlines, more than 300 boys are still missing after gunmen abducted them from their boarding school in Katsina State in northern Nigeria. Security forces have continued to search in the nearby forest area to try and locate them. This is after attackers on motorcycles stormed the all-boys government science school late on Friday and engaged security forces in a fierce gun battle, forcing hundreds of students to flee. The US has formally rescinded Sudan's status as a state sponsor of terrorism. The announcement on Monday removes the biggest barrier to the African country's access to international lending institutions and economic development. Sudan was designated as a state sponsor of terrorism in 1993, in part for its support of militant Palestinian organizations such as Hamas, as well as for harboring al-Qaeda leader Osama bin Laden. Less than 2 years ago, a popular protest movement led to the ouster of Omar al-Bashir, who ruled Sudan for 3 decades. And finally, in Niger, 30 candidates are vying to succeed President Mahamadou Issoufou, who is coming to the end of his second term. The official campaign period was launched last weekend ahead of the December 27th presidential election. On Sunday, voters in Niger took part in a long-delayed municipal and regional election. The vote took place just a day after an attack by the Boko Haram jihadist group claimed at least 27 lives. The United States has begun rolling out its vaccine. Millions of doses from Pfizer are being delivered to clinics around the country. It comes as the death toll there approaches 300,000, and experts warn people not to let their guard down. Dan Williams reports from Michigan.
A significant moment here in Michigan that should provide a ray of light for the rest of the United States. The first shipments of the COVID-19 vaccine, the Pfizer COVID-19 vaccine, having left this facility a little earlier. Now, in all, trucks carrying 189 boxes of 184,275 vials left this plant, each vial containing 5 doses of COVID-19 vaccine. So that's around 921,375 doses in all. Now, a further 400 boxes will be departing on Monday, so that's a further 390,000 vials. And by around Wednesday, Pfizer expects all 2.9 million doses of this initial delivery to have been completed. It's a huge mobilization and logistics effort involving a very complicated chain of logistics. Now, a key element requires that the vaccine is kept at frozen temperatures, minus 94 degrees Fahrenheit or minus 70 degrees Celsius. The boxes are packed with dry ice to that end, and each box has a sensor in order to potentially warn of any issues. Now, in all, the US plans to distribute around 14 million vaccine doses by the end of the year, with a further 50 to 80 million by the end of February. It's all, of course, part of this Operation Warp Speed. Now, the priority will be for high-risk populations, that's healthcare workers, nursing home staff and residents, with the widespread availability for much of the rest of the US population only likely to happen in late spring, early summer. So there is a fear that things could get worse before they get better. In the US, there have been more than 16 million people now infected by COVID-19. More than 297,000 people have died from the virus. And experts are fearful that more than 200,000 more people could die before the end of this pandemic. And it means, of course, that experts are warning that people must remain socially distanced, they must continue to wear masks until that all-important herd immunity is built up. Dan Williams, CGTN, Kalamazoo, Michigan.
Singapore's Prime Minister says the country has approved Pfizer-BioNTech's COVID-19 vaccine and expects the first shipment by the end of December. He says the city-state will have enough doses for all its 5.7 million people by the third quarter of 2021. It will be free for all citizens and long-term residents. He also said he and other government officials would be among the early recipients after healthcare workers, frontline workers and the elderly and the vulnerable. Bahrain has approved the registration of China's coronavirus vaccine developed by Sinopharm, but a statement did not clarify whether its approval means it will now be available to the general public. Regulators cited data from phase 3 clinical trials that showed the vaccine is 86% effective. Trials of the Sinopharm shots have been underway in the kingdom and it's already been approved for frontline workers. Bahrain has said it will provide COVID-19 vaccines for free to all citizens and residents. Officials and finance experts have gathered in the eastern Chinese city of Shanghai to discuss the city's goal of becoming a global financial center and how they can be achieved.
By 2035, Shanghai should become a global financial center on par with New York and London, equipped with open and modern financial markets and a global RMB hub.
That's according to a report jointly issued by the Shanghai Advanced Institute of Finance with two other institutions during the Shanghai Finance Forum, which took place over the weekend. To achieve Shanghai's goal, the report calls for steps including the building of a more layered financial derivatives market, as well as a mature market for high-yield bonds, ones with higher risk and returns, often with lower credit ratings.
That would afford more risk management instruments for investment managers to manage their exposure to the market risk.
Experts say managing investment risks are not all about lowering them, but also diversification. Besides, a better market for high-yield bonds can help with the real economy.
The importance of that is not only for affording investors better investment choices, but also it allows for small and medium enterprises to actually have a channel in the capital markets to raise funds, because most of these small and medium enterprises, they don't have very high credit grade.
Another suggestion made in the report is to allow private and foreign asset management firms to participate in the primary market for non-performing assets.
As our economy and technologies develop, there are bound to be non-performing or distressed assets in the market. We need to better address this issue in order to achieve China's goal of a dual circulation development policy.
The dual circulation proposal places emphasis on domestic economic growth and cycles, supplemented by global economic cycles. But to get there, it requires China to develop a more functional financial market. Yang Chengxu, CGTN, Shanghai.
China recently held two large trade fairs. One was the China International Import Expo in Shanghai. Some Italian companies that attended the event say it was a crucial opportunity to expand the Made in Italy brand in the thriving Chinese market. A record number of Italian businesses took part this year. CGTN's Hemion Kitson reports from Milan.
Stella Milano is a quintessential Made in Italy brand. The craftsmanship behind their jewels has been handed down for 7 decades, a tradition now set to be exported to China.
Chinese people, more than others, are very interested in something that is really original, made in Italy.
This year was the company's third visit to the China International Import Expo. Foreign attendance was down at the event due to pandemic-related travel restrictions, but it was still a valuable exercise in market research.
In the past, they just were interested in the big brands like Bulgari, like Tiffany, like Cartier. In these last years, they were more interested in small brands.
As companies struggle with COVID-19 downturns, they're increasingly looking to China as a means of recovery, and the CIIE is a major platform for businesses to expand there.
Potential is immense. And if you can only grasp, just a little share of that huge market that you have in China, we're all going to be happy.
This was the first year at the expo for Only Juices. The family-owned business exports 100 different products, including juices, baby food and candied fruit around the world. Manufacturing is based on the island of Sicily, a hub for some of the country's best produce.
It has the gift of God because of the fertility of the soil, which comes from the Etna volcano, which is incredible.
Last year, Italy was the first G7 country to join China's Belt and Road Initiative, allowing for more investment between the two countries. While a record number of Italian companies took part in the expo this year because of travel restrictions, most were represented by a delegate in China. Business owners hope that next year will be a more personal experience.
It's always a pleasure meeting with them because they are always so friendly, and they are so interested in what we are doing, all our collections.
Many businesses are hopeful that next year will bring a rapid bounce back from the COVID crisis.
2021, my hopes are that, of course, COVID is going to be defeated 110%, and this is going to allow us to travel more to China and to be able to fulfill better the needs of the Chinese people.
Hermione Kitson, CGTN, Milan.
Meanwhile, the retail sector in the UK is set to end this year with massive losses. Both small shops and big-name luxury malls are subject to dropping sales due to new waves of COVID-19 infections. Nawid Jabakil reports from London.
Open for business. Fabrizio Accoli's fashion store in London has been closed since early November. Like thousands of businesses, he was ordered to shut his doors as part of a nationwide lockdown.
Yeah, it's a bit struggle to stay open again because now we suffer. We are independent, and if people don't get to the shopping, it's a bit struggling.
Fabrizio says sales are down 40% so far this year, and it's a similar picture nationwide. Britain's retail sector has been battered by COVID-19. Lockdowns and restrictions have meant fewer customers and sales. The Centre for Retail Research expects shops to have lost more than $23 billion in sales this year alone.
After almost a month of closures, many businesses are keen to make up for lost time. But the pandemic has hit the UK economy harder than most major nations. And the worry for many retailers is that even though they can reopen, the damage done so far this year may force them to quickly close down for good.
It's not just small businesses feeling the heat. Luxury retailer Harrods has started its traditional Boxing Day sale almost a month early.
This has been enormously costly, the first lockdown and the second lockdown, and the lack of the international tourists for us has been hugely costly. But we've managed to pivot around that. Even during that time, we've got stronger on our web.
For many businesses, the end of a second lockdown will be welcome news, especially alongside progress on a vaccine that could see life return to normal next year. In the meantime, the focus for many retailers will be simply to survive.
An Egyptian architect is making headwaves by designing accessories that mirror work by British-Iraqi architect Zaha Hadid. With a new outlook, the 24-year-old architect by profession has applied notable techniques of the Queen of Curves into unique earrings. CGTN's Terry Wangari has that story.
Egyptian architect Basant Bagdi Abu Zaid is one of the most sought-after designers in the country. From buildings to accessories, Zaid has sought inspiration from renowned British-Iraqi architect Zaha Hadid.
I've loved Zaha Hadid since I was a little girl. She was the reason I studied architecture. I love her work. She's my idol. When I started studying at college, my admiration for her grew. I felt that my work was similar to her style.
The only difference between Zaid and her idol is that they went into different industries.
While preparing my graduation project that discusses the connection between architecture and fashion, I discovered many things in common with her because I also love the organic style with lines that are soft and curvy, just like her work. This was the thing I addressed in my graduation project, the connection between architecture and fashion. I don't feel the need to create buildings. The difference between architecture and fashion is that the design is implemented on a smaller space, so we can put our creativity into it, and the result would be faster and easier. It may take an hour to make the design, but it will need 5 to 10 years to build a building like Zaha Hadid's.
The 24-year-old's accessories all boast sleek lines and curves, mimicking many of the iconic buildings designed by the Queen of Curves.
I enjoy combining different types of art. This time I will connect architecture with accessories, and I will use architecture as an inspiration for my designs. Of course, I was working on the graduation project, so I created mood board, which mostly comprised of Zaha Hadid's work. So I started to think about how to create designs that mirror every building or has the same spirit.
Abu Zaid takes direct orders online and sells her products to jewelry shops. Her designs cost an estimated $9 for the acrylic pieces and $18 for the copper pieces.
This is a new thing that is not available in the market. Things that are available now are the typical designs, but Abu Zaid's designs are not available in the market. So when we make unique items, they become special.
Today we started executing the new collection. I have 2 collections. The first was Zaha Hadid, named after her, and each design was named after a building designed by Zaha Hadid. Today we are making the second part of the collection. Because the first one was only earrings, I wanted to expand my work and make belts, bracelets and rings and all the other accessories.
Zaid hopes to expand her line beyond earrings and to continue exploring the connection between fashion and architecture. Terry Wangari, CGTN.
Let's have a look at the commodities market. Oil prices fell today as persistent oversupply in the market overshadowed hopes that a rollout of coronavirus vaccines will lift global fuel demand. Signs of rising supply have weighed on the market, with the biggest onshore builds this year seen in China. Lebanon oil production stood at 1.28 million barrels per day today. That's up from 1.25 million barrels per day in late November. In the United States, energy firms last week added the most oil and natural gas rigs in a week since January. Still to come on Global Business. Egyptian entrepreneur amasses wealth from breeding thousands of scorpions.
You don't find the stories of North Africa by sitting on the sidelines. No one else will take you where we can in North Africa. And no one else will show you what it's all about. CGTN, see the difference.
Scorpions are very hardy animals that are resistant to hunger and thirst. They're known to populate desert regions and are avoided due to their highly potent venom. There are almost 2,000 scorpion species, but only 30 or 40 have poison that is strong enough to kill a person. However, an Egyptian man is breeding nearly 80,000 scorpions and sells their venom abroad for thousands of dollars per gram.
Several years ago, a young Egyptian man abandoned his degree in archaeology to hunt scorpions in the country's shores and deserts, extracting their venom for medical use.
My project focuses on extracting venom from scorpions and snakes, which we catch from the Egyptian deserts and shores. We catch the scorpions and collect them from farms all over Egypt. We house more than 80,000 scorpions in many farms in Egypt, away from populated areas. We extract this venom because it has many benefits, especially in manufacturing the anti-venom to treat scorpion bites. This is the first product. This is considered as one of the important species. It is the most important one in the Middle East, nicknamed the death stalker. I take the scorpion from its cage, I hold it this way to control its telson and its movement so that I can control the extraction of the venom. I apply salted water with 10% concentration on the nerve centers on the scorpion's vesicles.
Caught using a colored UV light, the scorpions are exposed to a tiny electric current to stimulate the release of the venom, 1 gram of which can produce between 20,000 to 50,000 doses of anti-venom.
We expose the scorpion to an electric current reaching 12 volts, 5 amperes, just to stimulate the scorpion to extract the venom. We put the electric current on one of the scorpion's vesicles or between each and every vesicle on the nerve centers. This way, the venom is released in front of us. We only get a very small amount to keep the purity of the venom. We have 1 drop of the venom.
And the poison fetches high-grade value.
More than 24 medicines are being manufactured using scorpion and snake venom all over the world. We export the venom to different European and American countries, including Virginia, Texas, and California. We also export to Belgium, Denmark, Germany, and France. The price of 1 gram reaches more than $10,000 on average, and the price depends from one type of venom to the other.
Nothing good can be said of poison. But then again, it is said poison is in everything, and the dosage is what makes it either poison or a remedy. But for Mohammed, he has found a way to make his harvest of the scorpion's poisons a benefit and possible remedy in the future. Beryl Oro, CGTN.
Tanzania has the second highest number of livestock in Africa. Ethiopia tops that list. Even as it boosts local production of hides and skins, Tanzania still imports roughly 50 million pairs of shoes annually from China and other Southeast Asian states. Only 1.2 million pairs of footwear are produced annually in the East African nation. Tonight, however, CGTN's Daniel Kijo takes up the story of one homegrown company that's trying to meet local demand. Here's that report on Grassroots.
Owiso Original Products is taking steps towards greater use of Tanzania's leather supply. The 20-year-old company makes a variety of styles of shoes, bags, and suitcases.
We work with orders. Per day I can hit 3,000 shoes. It really depends on the orders. We can even make 100,000 shoes and still deliver on time.
The company employs over 183 staff and has a youth training program with 100 trainees. Despite being the second cattle producer in Africa, the country only produces 1.2 million shoes annually. In a bid to support local producers like Owiso, President Magufuli's government has upped the import duty on second-hand leather products imported into the country from 25% to 35%.
Takwimu zinaonyesha kuwa kwa wastani kwa mwaka.
Statistics show that on average our country needs 54 million pairs of shoes annually. We also need purses, bags, belts, leather jackets and more. You can clearly see the demand for all leather products.
Majaketi ya ngozi na kadhalika.
Ministry of Livestock and Fisheries statistics show that at least 50 million pairs of shoes are imported into the country each year. The founder of Woiso Original Products, Mr. Kenneth Woiso, worked as a shoe shiner in a small stand much like this one in the streets of Dar es Salaam. His drive and ambition resulted in him owning his own factories. Now, the government says it wants to create more success stories by regulating imports of synthetic and used leather goods which compete unfairly against local leather products. Woiso's management says, despite the challenge of unfair competition from synthetic products imported, they want to expand into other markets.
We want to keep improving our products. We are at the international level, yes, but we want to go further.
The government has encouraged the use of modern tannery technology and the establishment of leather technology training and research institutes. It hopes to create a better fit between the country's cattle levels and the number of shoes produced domestically. Daniel Kijo, CGTN, Dar es Salaam.
Let's look at the currencies now. And a banking sector report released in Nigeria shows the devaluation of the naira against global currencies will impact negatively on foreign currency loans and weaken capital base for the lenders. The Afrinvest banking sector report for 2020 says the capital base of the Nigerian banking sector has also come under pressure due to the adoption of international financial reporting standards. The report says devaluation of the naira would inflate industry foreign currency loans, which is dominated by the oil and gas, manufacturing, general commerce and other import-dependent sectors. The naira remained unchanged to the greenback at 384 from the same figure last Friday. And with that, we come to the close of Global Business tonight. Remember, you can send your feedback to the contacts on the screen and follow us on our digital media platforms. I'm Peninah Karibe. Thank you for watching.